Everyone wants to reach for the easy solution. More police in schools does not solve this problem. That is not an opinion. Look at the data. Increasing police officers does not do anything. More money to policing does not do anything. Just if it did, it would have by now. Hey everyone, I'm just popping on. And, to be honest, I'm not even sure why I'm popping on right now. Hey everybody. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I mean, I'm hopping on live and I don't even know why I'm hopping on live, because this is just such an embarrassing, shameful, deeply violent, inexcusable moment. And it's just really wild to be a person that works in a corrupt institution.
Obviously, taking on the army is dumb, but what about self-defense against brown shirts? A couple things here. I think if someone buys a gun right now under the... this is going to seem like a contradiction, but it's not. Just give me a couple sentences to explain it. I think if somebody wants to get a gun for self-protection, and most times, in most cases, that's going to be paranoid. However, with the way this country is trending, I totally understand why somebody might do it for the psychological fulfillment. And you know what? We may find ourselves in a very difficult situation where every piece of arms and equipment we have in the hands of the left in one day in the future is going to be valued. But in the alternative universe where, we win enough political power that we can change things for the better, gun control is going to be part of that. The world where we get Medicare for all, the world where we get free college and student loan debt relief and public transit and a Green New Deal and a $20 minimum wage and all the good shit, union rights. We actually appoint a bunch of new people on the Supreme Court. We add a bunch of new states. We reform the Constitution. Whatever bullshit you pick, whatever level of social democracy you think is worth getting. Yeah, gun control is going to be a part of that. I mean, when I'm talking about how I'm supporting gun control, I know it's not going to happen. Joe Biden is not suddenly going to muster up the balls to take on the Republicans for gun control. It's not happening. So what do you want me to say? You want me to pretend that gun control is bad just because it's not going to happen? No, it's part of a panoply of policy that we would actually endorse and support if it was going to turn America from the shithole country it is to becoming mediocre. As with the rest of the developed world.
Which is what Congress is. And it's just really wild to be a person that works in a corrupt institution, which is what Congress is. And to try and be a normal person surrounded by so much decay and moral emptiness that frankly transcends party is very difficult. I was up until 5 o'clock in the morning last night. I could not sleep thinking about those babies and thinking about those educators and thinking about those families and thinking about not just Texas, but Buffalo and California and Sandy Hook and Tree of Life and First Emmanuel, and on and on and on and on. And the thing is like it's not just gun violence. There's so many different areas and issues where all of us agree, if not all, an overwhelming amount of us agree, and Congress still can't get their shit together.
It's important to point out that this isn't about. It's not like they don't know. The Democrats, you have to understand that the reason why our country sucks so much is the Democrats. This is something that a lot of people don't like to hear because they wear the blue jersey. But Republicans and the right-wing psychos, they're a minority. They exist, and there's going to be some politicians that agree with those people. And they are what they are. But the vast majority of people don't agree. It's not about persuasion. It's not about argument. It's the fact that the Democrats can't keep a promise, can't accomplish anything. So a lot of people who disagree with Republicans check the fuck out, because when you vote for a Democrat, nothing changes. because it's a corrupt corporate party too. They're there to lie to you. Republicans tell you what the corporations are going to get. Democrats lie about being opposed to it. And when you realize that, a lot of people check the fuck out. That's it. But when the Democrats actually, when we fluke into a situation where somehow a president actually wants to accomplish change, gets into office, or some grizzled politician gets in the White House and they're like, I want to go down in the history books. I want to be beloved. I've reached my goal. I'm the president. It's all downhill from here. When it once in a while, somebody hits in that position of power and does a bunch of shit, they love that guy, even if he's a piece of shit. I think Barack Obama is the moment where the human species odds of extinction dramatically increased. I think Barack Obama is the most, when you go back and look at the damage that has happened, his election is the cause. Is it because the voters were wrong for voting for him? In the sense they were wrong because they believed he actually understood, he wanted change. But Barack Obama had complete control of the federal government at the likes of which we haven't seen. And he did fucking nothing with it. He did nothing for his base. Nothing. He didn't even increase the minimum wage. Think about how pathetic that's a one-day bill. That's not some sort of thing where you need to build a new apparatus of state. You're changing the number in a piece of legislation that's existed since the 30s. Just a complete and utter loser, and he did nothing significant on climate change. His healthcare bill sucked shit. Nothing on housing, nothing on union rights, nothing on immigration reform. Didn't even convince Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire when she was 80 with multiple cancers. The fact that if you respect Barack Obama, you are wrong. And you're everything that's wrong with our country. Legitimately. Bush stealing the election was another, and Reagan winning was the biggest. Reagan winning was bad, but Barack Obama was the last shot. I mean, we had 2016 and Bernie Sanders, but I don't think that that was always a long shot. The last time we actually had a chance was Barack Obama. He made sure Hellfire missiles blew 2 innocent people's houses, though. Yeah. We've talked about that cookie for Fox. Obama, if there was any justice in the world, Obama would be despised just as much as, I was going to say George W. Bush, but I remembered that libs love him now because he once criticized Trump and he ate a piece of candy with Michelle. Jesus.
It's really hard and it's super frustrating. And it's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for me being a part of this. And I don't want to be one of those ding-dongs that just tells you to vote harder. Because the solution's a lot bigger than that. And it's going to take a lot more of us and from us to fix this. This isn't just about voting harder. This is about doing a lot more than that. And we have a long ways to go. And it's really important that we understand the roots of this. The vast majority of mass shooters are young men that have a very troubling history with women. Almost every single time there is violence against women that immediately predates this violence. This shooter in Texas shot his own grandmother. We've seen a pattern here with this. And when it talks about like what can be done short term, I mean, are there solutions? Yes. We know that there are evidence-based solutions that work. Can we get that past the finish line with the political environment? That's the question. And when you have an entire political party that is completely subservient to little daddy NRA, that will defend an 18-year-old a troubled 18-year-old boy to be able to impulse purchase an AR-15 before they're even legally able to purchase a beer. And then you not only have a Republican Party that's like that, but then you have Democratic senators who defend them and run cover for them. This is a lot more than just voting harder. And it also cuts to the basic structure of our democracy. if you can call it that. Because when you have a presidency that's not determined by a popular vote, when you have a Senate where tens of millions of people more can vote for one candidate, one party, and still be in the minority, where even in the House
By the way, they're not even in the minority. They're not doing anything. They're in the majority.
Representatives that's supposed to represent our population, that it gets gerrymandered to all hell.
AJ and Rose is next year too.
10 years in order to ensure an outsized minority rule and voice in both the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It is becoming increasingly difficult for people to defend the stance that we live in a democracy, in a true
We
one.
don't. We never have. We've had moments where the majority that became a supermajority and it overcame the anti-democratic walls. But we've never lived in a democracy. We've never lived in a democracy. Sometimes the weight of public opinion is so huge, it washes over all the levees and walls to keep that public opinion back. But the idea that our government is run by a common sense majority of citizens is fucking not even close to true and has never been true.
And what the real truth of the matter is when you look at the fact that our elections are bought, that corporations and lobbies, powerful corporate lobbies, have more say in our legislation than everyday people, we are living in oligarchy that has its democratic moments. We live in an oligarchy that has maybe some democratic areas geographically, maybe some democratic moments, but I mean, we live in a time when the person who's actually supported by more people winning is a rare occasion that is shocking and thrilling when people can beat the power of big money. Being on the right side a lot of the times means that you are on a lonely side that feels small, because the power of money, the power of institutions, the power of intergenerational dynastic families can be and often is overwhelming. But that doesn't mean that we give up. And I'm not trying to give people some kind of like corny locker room pump up speech, but that is just simply the fact, is that hope is an existential question. It is an existential decision, because what all of these powers are trying to do is to extinguish the life out of you, whether you are alive or not. They seek to extinguish your hope. They seek to extinguish your faith. They seek to extinguish your desire to fight for a better future. They are doing everything they can to get you to give up. And that's not just the Republican Party. This is the entire power structure of this country. Last night, Democratic leadership went to the mat to defend the day and day after, the days after, during and all of this stuff. Both today and I imagine they would continue, and yesterday, supporting an incumbent that is pro-NRA, anti-choice. They mobilized to deflate a grassroots. They mobilized to try to stop a historic victory candidate. I mean, there comes a time when you have to ask if the political leadership in this country is fighting against everyday people or for everyday people. No matter what they say, you have to look at what they do. And I have always seen my role as just trying to be the small crack of a window, the small crack of a door, the small crack in the dam that lets everyone else through. It's not about anything else. If My battery's going low. But it's like, you know, if I cared about getting anything else, I would not act the way that I do in Congress. I do this because I feel like everyday people need to have a voice and in all of this. But it's,
I mean, I think the reality is that there is probably about 50 or so Democrats in Congress who legitimately are trying to make the world a better place for American citizens. There's probably about 25 of those, maybe 10 to 25 of those have any balls to stand up to the establishment. So, like, there's a bunch of people that are sympathetic with what AOC is saying, but they're not going to put anything at risk. We have a handful of politicians that are willing to take a risk. That's the problem we face. And it's not because our politicians are cowardly. It's also that we don't have the institutions to hold people accountable. Why do you think people like Tim Kaine hate unions so much? Because the moment you have a lot of very powerful unions, you're going to have a lot of very organized working class people. There's going to be money available. So the first thing these corporate Democrats have to do is they have to get unions under control. They have to create a class of people, a consultant advisor class, to capture those organizations and keep them away from the rank and file, to de-democratize the unions. One of the most insane examples of this, so I'm very pro-union, but the truth is that unions, like anything else, can be corrupted and co-opted. And in Nevada, during the 2020 presidential campaign, Bernie Sanders won an absolute landslide in Nevada. Yet the union of casino employees endorsed someone else. They were against Bernie. They were against Medicare for all. And then Bernie Sanders wins a mega landslide at all of the polling places where those union workers actually caucused. What is going on there? How can a leadership of a union feel like they can buck the own desires, political desires of their own fucking rank and file? How is that possible? That was one of the most troubling things that we saw in 2020. That was so troubling. Tempo Dan, thank you for the gifted subs. That's why we have to do our best to democratize unions again and get them away from this business-oriented, collaborationist, consultant class.
It's hard. It's really hard. And it's going to get worse. And I don't like, as a leader, telling you that. But so long as a party, especially a Democratic Party, thinks that there is some level of horror that is going to convince Republicans to change their mind, like so long as they're banked on that, like this is going to keep happening. And when you look at people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, I mean, people aren't stupid, man. Just look at the FECs, look at the reporting, look at the disclosures. It's really not hard to put A and B together. There's a lot of people in here that are not working for you. And we need a renewal. People treat Congress like it's some kind of incumbency protection racket. These seats do not belong to us. I've had arguments with people about this, about whether this belongs to us or not, because it doesn't. This is a seat of power that the public entrusts to certain individuals. We're not entitled for it.
The moment that AOC is comfortable actually challenging leadership is the moment that we will have a signal that things are ready to change. Is the reality. Is that, and the reality is Bernie and AOC are great and they've been very important for the movement, but we don't have those bulldogs that go for the throat of people like Nancy Pelosi. That's what we need.
To it. It doesn't belong to us. We have to earn it. And a lot of the times, a lot of these decisions are made by default, and we can't be making them by default. We can't be making them by default. We deserve to have higher standards. We deserve to have higher standards. That's just it. I mean, at this day and age, why are people taking NRA money? Why are people taking corporate money of any kind? Why are we doing that? So, there's, of course, a political issue that we have here, but then there's also a very deep cultural issue that we have. We have the radicalization of young men. This is an issue. Young women are not doing this. Young non-binary people are not doing this. Trans people are not doing this. This is an issue that we have. And young men are being radicalized right now in ways that we have not seen. And we need to talk about that. I mean, and who's in charge of all of these platforms that are perpetuating this misinformation and violence? Men. Mark Zuckerberg. Where you at, bro? Where you at? 4chan, Reddit. What's up? Because all these little things that they're talking about when they say
NRA is less than $2 million last campaign cycle. When people use the phrase NRA, they're referring to a constellation of gun rights advocacy organizations. Direct campaign contributions are literally not actually the majority of their activism. They do a lot more stuff as far in direct voter engagement, including organizing and money. And it's true that the NRA is not the most powerful lobbying group in Congress, but it's part of a larger panoply of conservative institutions that opt in concert. Excuse me, chat. And so they so, like, you know, if you just look at like the top line campaign contributions and think, oh, that's not very much, you're brain dead. They also do their own direct expenditure, and the NRA has actually been in decline because for a variety of reasons, mostly due to corruption with their presidents and getting involved with Russian foreign agents, and then all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah. Voting rights advocates, and especially there's a lot of people who are voting rights single issue voters, people who have become obsessed with guns over every other issue, and that's an important, being able to have an activist base who's highly engaged is really important. But you also keep in mind, as I said before, it's part of that constellation of right-wing money that move in concert. So the NRA is a very effective organization politically.
Free speech, they don't actually mean it, because they don't protect all speech. They do draw a line at some point. But, you know, people like Mark Zuckerberg are busy having dinner with Tucker Carlson, who's also airing little great replacement theories that are inciting violence. And he's platforming the very people that mass shooters are citing in their own very clearly written manifestos. Let us dispense with this myth of mental illness, okay? After this pandemic, millions of people have struggled with mental illness of some kind, whatever it is, depression, anxiety, bipolar, you know, whatever, from mental illnesses that are less presenting to mental illnesses that are more presenting. This is not about that. This is about a trained, cohesive ideology of hatred and violence, whether it is explicit white supremacy that we saw in Buffalo, or whether it was just simply the silos that young men radicalize themselves in online for whatever reason, using whatever pretenses. And everyone wants to reach for the easy solution. More police in schools does not solve this problem. That is not an opinion. Look at the data. Increasing police officers does not do anything. More money to policing does not do anything. Just if it did, it would have by now. And we have teachers who are not even making a living or a dignified wage, some of whom have sold their blood plasma in order to make ends meet. And they're now sacrificing their lives for the chance of possibly saving their students' lives. And where are we talking about putting resources first? Not them, not in healthcare, not anywhere else, but in the place that already has the most resources that have yielded the least amount of change? Come on. Just because both parties can agree that this is something that they love putting more and more money in, no matter how much data tells you that this doesn't do anything, that this doesn't move the needle significantly, because the issues and the ability to actually address the root issues is too politically fraught because of what? Because of money? Because we're not willing or ready or capable or mature enough to have honest conversations about race in this country? We are in a deeply violent moment. A deeply violent moment. And it is everywhere and transcends everything. We live in a country that lets people sleep on the street in the middle of winter. We have governments that take the homeless out of trains and throw them on the street to die, many of whom are veterans or actually are ones that are experiencing mental illness. We live in a society that says if your job doesn't give you health care, you're basically bankrupt for the month, or you're just out of luck. I lived years of my life with no health insurance because I couldn't afford it, just ignoring pains and hoping that I never got sick. That is violence. It's violence. A society that incentivizes charging so much for housing that an entire generation feels like they may never be able to own a home unless their parents gift them some generational wealth. This is barbarism. This is barbarism. And we are surrounded by violence. The precarity of all of our existence every day. I was walking down the street today after staying up until 5 o'clock in the morning yesterday, thinking about those babies, thinking about those families. And I cross a park, and there's all these people in the park. People are taking pictures, and kids are, playing on swings, and there's elders like playing board games. And I now we think this could
She was so New York with the fist slaps. That's so fucking true. She's very East Coast.
Just end right now. It's not worth it. That precarity, we deserve better. Everyone deserves better. And there's so many politicians out here that have more words to say defending a goddamn AR-15 and defending the right for radicalized teenagers to impulse purchase an AR-15, and they have more to say defending that than they do have to say about those babies. Than they do have to say about those elders in Buffalo. They do have to say about our Taiwanese brothers and sisters. They do have to say about people in Tree of Life or First Emmanuel. They have more to say about guns than they have to say about these kids. Why? Because there's a gun lobby that gives them little pieces of paper to read off of. Just copy paste. And it's literally what they do. I've noticed that that horrified and heartbroken is the new thoughts and prayers.
Horrified and heartbroken is the new thoughts and prayers. Yeah. Thoughts and prayers is now done. They've done enough thoughts and prayers. Now it's horrified and they all say horrified. She's right about that. That's such a good catch. Jesus.
Because these people are just taking money and taking the little talking points and babies don't have that.
Uh-oh. She almost let us fuck slip.
There's no money in protecting kids, is there? Apparently. And it's like, you know what? Like, if they actually believed in their positions, maybe they just shouldn't take money from the NRA to prove that. There are plenty of entities that I am in agreement with. I still don't take money from them because it is important to me to communicate to you all the independence of our positions, and that this is something that I believe, that we believe, without that kind of influence. If they believe this stuff so much, they should stop taking a check from the NRA and see if they keep holding that up. Are you bought or not? Why don't you show up? Why don't you prove it?
You have an obligation to like, comment, and subscribe.